Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode review. Hiatus Part 2 has finally ended, and Sevens is back, so it came out subbed a few days ago, and I'm going to be going over all my thoughts on the episode featuring a duel between Rook and Oamino Ushiro. I'm never going to forget that name because of how many times he freaking said it in this episode. But guys, ultimately, I thought this was a good episode. I'm very excited for the next two episodes, probably more so than I was for this one, only because I felt like this was kind of a more introductory into what is going to happen in the next two episodes. Obviously, this was an important episode because it kicks off the duel between Team Yuga and Team Roa, and it's Roa's formal debut, right? I mean, this is his formal debut episode, and it was sprinkled with some good comedic moments, and it was also sprinkled with a couple of moments that were like, excuse me, that really just kind of took me off guard. And I guess the first one we have to address in the very beginning of this episode, where Roa and Romin finally come face to face, and Romin walks into the apartment looking very depressed, looking very out of it, almost like she really doesn't want to be there, and she's almost trying to kind of express those feelings towards Roa, like, I really don't like what you're putting me through and what you're having me do. And Roa literally grabs her and throws her against a wall. And my jaw kind of dropped at that moment because I did not think we were going to see anything of that nature. But it immediately makes the viewer hate Roa, right? Like, there's no reason that you can justify those actions of taking, actually not his sister, that's another thing that I'm about to get into, but taking really anyone, especially a family member, and forcefully throwing them against a wall and then intimidatingly standing over them while threatening them with blackmail. Like, there is no way that you can justify that. Like, Roa Kirishima is a POS. He just is. And that's not a bad thing. That's kind of what this show needs. And he's able to use that flirtatious flauntiness of him to do whatever he wants, right? We see all the fangirls that he has when he steps onto the stage because he's the lead singer, and it's that typical cliche of lead singers or actors, you know, everyone loves them, but no one actually knows who they are. And sometimes you have these people who are, you know, very famous people that are just not good people, and that is exactly what we have seen from Roa in the very early stages of the show. Someone that people adore. We even see Mimi, a 37-year-old mom, coming in and cheering her heart out for Roa, but yet he's not a good person. He's not a good person. He's setting this all up to try and steal Rush Dueling, but worse than that, again, he assaulted, minorly, but still assaulted his cousin, and that was another aspect of this episode that was very interesting. And I don't mind the dynamic there that Roa and Romin are not brother and sister. We were assuming that they were brother-sister. They are not. They are actually cousins. So that was another moment early in this episode that kind of caught me off guard. And to be honest, I was trying to think of cousins in Yu-Gi-Oh! You guys can maybe help me out, and if you have any that you remember, leave them down below. But I could not think of any cousins in Yu-Gi-Oh! We are so used to the brother-sister dynamic that seeing cousins is actually pretty unique and pretty interesting. I wouldn't have minded if it was brother-sister, but I also don't mind at all that it is cousin and cousin, so that wasn't really a big deal for me. And, you know, are there more siblings? Are they both only childs, or do they actually have siblings? Where are their parents? You know, I don't think we're going to see parents, but there's still a lot of questions about the Kirishimas. And then, of course, Roa is using this secret as blackmail against Romin. What is that secret? First thing I thought of, is it that she's tone deaf? Because remember how offended she got when people accused her of being tone deaf in episode 3? It's probably not something as silly as that. It's probably something a little deeper and more embarrassing. But we've all been in those situations, right? That's a pretty typical cliche that the bad guy or someone that you don't like is using blackmail against you. It's cliche, but it can still be done pretty interestingly, especially when you don't know what that secret is, and that will obviously be another point and depth added to her character whenever that does get revealed. But the main highlight of this episode for me was that interaction between Roa and Romin, and obviously Roa making Romin give tickets to Rook, Yuga, and Gakuto to show up to the concert, Sevens Hell Hall, where they are going to put on this 3v3 duel, Team Roa versus Team Yuga, winner-take-all Rush Dueling ownership, where Roa wants to transform it to Roa Rush Duels, obviously, for his own personal gain and to increase his brand, I suppose. And one of the funniest moments of this episode had to be when Romin was in the dressing room and Yuga, Rook, and Gakuto walk in, and Yuga gives her like a custom guitar dual disc, which I have very good confidence in saying that we will see that in the very next episode airing in 2 days from now. And Gakuto comes in with a bouquet of roses, as like a typical good luck thing. And obviously, Rook did not bring anything. And Rook was like, wait, when did you guys even get this stuff? And so Rook is then running through the halls. And, that's a comedic moment. It's like a joke that, seems like just a very one-off joke, but it has a purpose. And that's the thing with Sevens. And I give them a lot of credit because I feel like almost everything that happens, or a lot of the things that happen, even if they seem like for the meme and for a joking matter, they all have purpose. And like the purpose of that joke was to get Rook alone and into the hallway, and that's where he meets Ushito. And Ushito, whose name means behind you, that's why he kept saying it so extravagantly in the episode, starts to creep Rook out and tell him about the story of, a ghost of a guitarist that died in the school 20 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever the story was. It was a ghost story, and obviously these are all kids, so it's easy. I mean, I still get creeped out by a good ghost story, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if that's something that only young kids get really creeped out, but it's definitely, well, I don't know. I actually don't know if it's easier to get creeped out when you're older or you're younger, because when you're younger, at least you're more innocent, and your mindset is a little more clean. When you're older, you start to, when things don't seem right, it can make you feel very uneasy. So that's actually a pretty interesting debate. But regardless, Rook gets very scared easily of the story, and it sets up the duel between him and Ushito. Romin has disappeared in her locker room. They go to watch Roa perform, and Roa announces that he has a special guest in the audience. It's Yuga. That's when they announced the 3v3, and Roa had Romin plant these stories in Rook's head while he was asleep about, ghost stories and rumors and, horror stories, all this stuff to try and spook Rook, get under his skin, get inside his head, and it works. Rook is completely shaken up at the beginning of this duel, and Ushito does really, really good until he essentially reveals that his name is Omae Ushito, and he's not just constantly saying behind you, and, it's something that's, I mean, I didn't think that was very clever or really well executed, but it gets the point across that when Rook realizes it's his name, he's no longer afraid by that phrase. And the circle of candles, it honestly was a very creepy duel, and the stories that Ushito was telling when he summoned his first 3 monsters I thought were really interesting. The Purple Mirror story, that being an actual urban legend in Japan, was really cool, that they made a monster creature from the Purple Mirror, so obviously this is the creature that is supposed to kill you. I think the urban legend is if you remember the Purple Mirror when you're 20 years old, you die. So I thought that was really cool, and that's a really cool origin story for that specific monster. The one with the bathroom, I immediately thought of Bloody Mary, but instead it's, endless urination, which I guess, theoretically, it's kiddish, but at the same time, childish. I don't think kiddish is a word. At the same time, it would be quite horrible if that was, your fate. But anyway, the ghost stories come out. Dark Rooker, which looked like an upgraded version of Reaper of the Cards, that was a really sick monster. Loved that ace. We see a new monster from Rook. Rook finally gets rolling at the very end of this episode when he realizes that Ushito, it's all an act, and he's just saying his own name. Rook summons Dragears. He summons another dragon monster, a new one. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it ends up defeating Ushito. And it was actually really cool at the end when the life points were very slowly draining as the last candle was still illuminating and the wind was kind of blowing the candle out. I honestly loved that visualization. I'm not sure Yu-Gi-Oh! Has ever done that before, where the life points have just slowly crawled like that while the duelist is basically begging to hang on to life until the life points hit 0. So that was really cool. And again, Sevens does things that are kind of outside the box. And when you've watched this franchise for 20 years, at least for me, I kind of appreciate little things like that. Roa acknowledges that Rook he's underestimated Rook. Rook is good. Romin, during this duel, clearly showed that she is not comfortable with this. Clearly apologizing to Rook, at least in her own head, for planting those stories in his mind. And in the very next episode, it looks like she's going to duel Gakuto, and that's why this episode was good. But because so much of my interest is on Romin and Roa, we didn't really get to see much of that outside the very intro of this episode, and I'm just super excited for next week's episode because Romin versus Gakuto is going to be very exciting. I think we're going to learn more about Romin, the reaction, because keep in mind, this right now is dramatic irony. Team Yuga does not realize that Romin is working with Roa. That's all going to be revealed next week, and that to me is great billing. It's really exciting, and it's something that is going to be really fun to just watch. And then, of course, the next duel after that is probably going to be Yuga versus Roa. So these next 2 episodes, I have very high hopes for. I thought this was a very good introduction to this little mini tournament that we're having, this little mini battle, this 3-on-3 battle. And yeah, ultimately, good episode. Had some funny moments, but my eyes are definitely set on the next couple of episodes more so than this one. But you guys let me know your thoughts on also the joke about them not remembering the names of the bassist and the drummer, especially the bassist. And the whole theme of this episode was that, you know, the bassist doesn't get the recognition and the acknowledgement. And if you're in a band or if you're familiar with band dynamics, that is such a typical joke that, like, the bassist doesn't matter and no one cares about the bassist. So even the fact that they kind of played on that joke a little bit in this episode and utilized that common cliche when it comes to bands was also really funny and definitely well appreciated by me. But you guys let me know all your thoughts on episode 10. Excited to talk to you down below in the comment section. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today to watch this review, and a special thank you to my platinum tier patrons Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Smith620, Blue Maiden 28, Panther J, Moon Calamity, Jarrett Bueller, and Aura Dragon, and to my diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Pegasus Seiya, Brandon Gomez, and Solid Snack, and to my Egyptian God tier patron, Stella Sky. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon, to everyone who is a YouTube channel member. You guys are amazing, and you really do breathe life into this channel. And thank you to everyone who just watches my videos, because without you guys, there would be no Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything. Talking Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's Up is every Wednesday night at 8 p.m., and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's watch-along and pre-show is every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's more 7's content than anyone could possibly want. I will talk to you down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.